What's good, Internet? I'm Terrari, a game developer, and today we're designing another character as a magic card. The usual caveats apply, so I designed in a void with no sets. We delve only into the relevant theory, and this is only my take on the character from what I know. Feel free to leave comments with your ideas. So for today's character, I'm picking my personal favorite character from anything ever, and that's everyone's favorite outsider, Claude von Regan. Let's jump right in.
Is my face really that interesting?
Claude is a playable Lord character from Fire Emblem Three Houses. Lords are kind of your primary character. Usually if they die, it results in a game over, whereas other characters can die and either stay dead or come back in later missions, depending on your settings. Claude is the leader of one of the titular three houses, called the Golden Deer. He's renowned for his wit, charm, and strategic abilities. In fact, some even call him the Schemer, since he always has a scheme up his sleeves. But make no mistake, he's a hero, through and through. He's born of mixed heritage. Claude is the grandson of the Lesser Alliance's leader and also heir to the throne in Elmira. This mixed background has made him an outsider in both nations, which, bro, same. I mean, maybe that's why I like him so much. Anyway, he grew up in Elmira and eventually returns to Leicester and joins the Officers Academy at Garreg Mach, where he excels, due in part to his cunning and also in part to his crest, the Crest of Regan. Although, depending on your perspective in this world, you could argue they're the same thing. Claude's a gifted archer, probably the best in the game, and I apologize to Bernie fans for this, and the only archer who can ride a wyvern mount. I will die on the hill that he's a bisexual icon as well. No matter what the game says, I know my people. So, with that introduction out of the way, where do we start the design? Today we're going to start with the colors. Usually I do this last, but I think this is kind of a good chance to go into color combinations. So we'll use the color wheel to explain what some of these concepts are. For those who don't know what the color wheel is, it's an idea in Magic the Gathering that arranges the 5 colors in a wheel with complementary colors adjacent to one another. So blue borders white and black because it shares attributes with each of them. Blue shares an aspect of control with white and cunning with black. Black shares the idea of freedom or even hedonism with red, and so on and so forth. By combining these colors, you can arrive at a unique identity represented by those colors and what they have in common, or where they disagree in the cases of opposed colors. So for Claude, we know he's cunning, he's always in control, he's adamantly independent, and always one step ahead. Only one set of colors come to mind for this, and that's Esper, or Obscura for newer players. In the Esper interpretation, it's usually represented by artifacts and technology, but the Obscura interpretation is more what we're going to lean into here, which is renowned for its scheming wizards. It's kind of a perfect fit for Claude. Still, I'm going to refer to it as Esper for the rest of the video, just because it rolls off the tongue a little easier. So Claude is Esper for sure, and maybe we'll tack on 1, 2, or 3 costs depending on the ability, but first let's talk about creature type. That's the easy part. He's human, a noble, and an archer. All of which are existing creature types, so we'll slap that on there and move on. Now I mentioned he rides a wyvern, so for our key words, we know he needs to fly. He also has the Crest of Regan, which allows him to absorb enemy HP when he attacks. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's exactly what the keyword lifelink does. Finally, we'll give him some resilience since a lord dying ends the game. I'm thinking Word 2 for now, but we may revisit that later. Alright, now let's talk about what the card wants to do. Claude is known for planning ahead, ambushes, foresight, that kind of thing. With that in mind, I think we can do something very interesting with him, but the ability will be in 2 parts. So for the first part, we'll simply have him tap, and we'll exile a card from our hand or graveyard. Now, typically when a card is exiled, you can't access it anymore, but we do want to access this later. So we'll put some sort of counter on it. We can call it whatever we want. I'm calling it a scheme counter. And we want to surprise our opponents with it, so we'll play it face down. This ability kind of represents the planning ahead aspect of Claude. He's setting up a trap and preparing for it. But the trap has to be sprung, so let's go to the second ability. In order to spring the trap, we've got a slightly complicated ability, so bear with me. I'm going to use a symbol that was introduced in Shadowmoor, which is, I believe, where the untap symbol comes from. Claude will need to be tapped to use this ability, but then he can untap, representing the trap being sprung. We'll also be using a hybrid mana symbol here, which means the ability can be played with blue or black mana. So we'll say it's 2 generic and 1 hybrid mana, so a total of 3 mana, and the untap. So what does the untapping give us? We'll pick a card with a scheme counter on it that we own in exile. Then we will attempt to cast that card by paying life instead of mana. This is a very powerful ability for 3 mana, so we need to limit it. So we'll say something like, remove a scheme counter from a card you own in exile and turn it face up. You may cast the card by paying life equal to its mana value if its mana value is less than or equal to Claude's power. Something like that's a good starting point. And since we have lifelink, we'll be able to make up the life loss pretty easily, which is a nice synergy, but our power is a bit static. So let's tack on one last part. If you don't cast a spell, we'll lean into Claude's archery ability by saying something like, otherwise, put a +1/+1 counter on Claude, and then Claude deals damage equal to its power to any target. So this complex ability is something that can only exist on a mythic, right? So we'll make Claude a mythic. And let's talk about his power now. I don't want this card to cost more than 4 mana so that it's playable, but that kind of limits our power. Blue and white usually get toughness efficient creatures, and black tends to get efficient creatures at a cost. So we'll probably have more toughness than power. This also keeps Claude from killing himself if damage gets redirected, which is nice. As I said, these colors get efficient toughness, so we'll probably go 1 for 1 with our mana value of 4 and say we have 4 toughness. And we'll shave off 1 or 2 for the power. And yeah, that's Claude the Schemer. You can find a link to the card in the descriptions. As usual, like and subscribe for more content, and let me know if you think I nailed the character or if I'm totally off the mark in the comments. This was actually the first card I started designing, even though the first episode was Cal. Claude is one of my favorite characters, and I really enjoyed making this sort of ode to the character. If there's someone you want to see in a future MTG treatment, let me know in the comments, and I may end up making a future episode on him. See you next time.